Hey everyone, welcome. We're doing something a little different today, diving deep into CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and we're going straight to the source. Forget textbooks, we're looking at our CPTSD on Reddit.
Yeah, getting into the nitty-gritty of what it's really like to live with this, yeah.
Exactly,
Okay.
hearing it straight from the people who experience it every day. Gotta warn you though, we're gonna be dealing with some heavy stuff, so if you need to take a break, please do. Your well-being comes first, all right?
Absolutely. No shame in taking a breather.
Okay, so one post that really got to me, this person was talking about their dad, right? And how, like, when they were teenagers, he urinated on them while they were asleep.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then, get this, he later told the story like it was some big joke.
Oh, that's messed up.
Right. And what really struck me was, years later, this person was still so deeply affected by it, it really stuck with them.
Yeah, and, it just goes to show that even things that might seem minor on the surface
Hmm.
can be incredibly traumatic, especially when they happen within a family dynamic that's already messed up.
Yeah.
It's not just about the physical act. It's about the violation of trust.
Mm.
The feeling of safety being completely shattered in a place where you're supposed to feel safest.
Exactly. It's like, how do you even begin to process that?
Right. And that's a lot of what we see with CPTSD. It often stems from prolonged exposure to these traumatic events,
Yeah.
often during childhood, where emotional or physical safety is just consistently compromised.
So it's like their sense of normal gets totally warped.
Exactly. And they carry those experiences with them into adulthood.
Which leads to the question of, well, how does this actually play out in everyday life? Like, okay, we get the origins, but what are the actual day-to-day challenges? I saw this one user describe it as constantly fawning, like always feeling this need to please others, avoid conflict at any cost, even if it means putting their own needs on the back burner. And they directly attributed it to their upbringing.
That makes a lot of sense. Fawning is a really common coping mechanism for people who've experienced trauma, particularly in childhood, because it's rooted in this deep fear of abandonment or rejection. So they become like hyper aware of other people's emotions.
Walking on eggshells all the time.
Yeah, constantly trying to anticipate and manage those emotions to ensure their own safety and avoid any potential for conflict.
Which, let's be real, that's exhausting to be on like that all the time. Oh, absolutely. It's incredibly draining. That constant need to please, to avoid upsetting anyone, it takes a huge toll.
And when you're living in that state of constant tension, no wonder even simple tasks can feel impossible. There was another user who talked about, this is going to sound so relatable to some people, but like even making a phone call was a struggle.
Oh, I feel that.
Right, because they were crippled by this fear of saying the wrong thing, upsetting the person on the other end of the line, just like frozen by anxiety.
Yeah, that's the hypervigilance that comes with CPTSD. Their nervous system is basically stuck on overdrive, constantly scanning for threats, even in situations that are perfectly safe.
So their brain's basically telling them they're in danger, even when they're not. Exactly. And when your internal alarm system is blaring like that 24/7, it's no wonder everyday tasks can feel insurmountable. Imagine trying to focus on work or even just have a conversation when you're constantly on edge, waiting for the other shoe to drop.
And that's why it's so important to remember all of this, these seemingly irrational fears, the
Mhm.
struggles, they're not character flaws, they're symptoms.
Exactly.
It's not about willpower, it's about recognizing that their brain and body are reacting to deep-seated trauma.
100%.
It makes you wonder then, with all that going on, how do people with CPTSD even begin to find comfort? I mean, we all need to feel safe and understood, right? Like, it's a basic human need.
Absolutely. That need for connection is so fundamental.
Right. So there was this other thread that really got me thinking. The question was simple. To people with CPTSD, what's the best way to comfort you? Seems straightforward, but the responses, oh man, they were all over the place.
It's interesting because trauma can make something as basic as seeking comfort so complicated. Think about it. Wanting connection, but being terrified of vulnerability.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Totally. And then you add the possibility of triggers, right? Something seemingly harmless, a gesture, a word, even a smell, could bring back intense emotional flashbacks.
It's almost like sensory overload in a way.
Right. And on top of all that, many people with CPTSD find it really difficult to actually articulate their needs.
Oh, I bet. Because how do you explain something so deep and personal, something you might not even fully understand yourself?
Exactly. It can feel incredibly overwhelming.
But here's the thing. Even with all those potential roadblocks, those threads about comfort, they were also filled with hope. Like, it was clear that people genuinely want to help, to offer comfort. They just often don't know how.
And that's where I think clear communication and setting those boundaries becomes so crucial. It really boils down to a simple phrase: don't assume, ask.
I love that. Don't assume, ask.
Yeah.
So simple, yet so powerful.
Right. It shows respect. It shows a willingness to meet someone where they're at, to actually listen to their needs and honor their boundaries. And when you look at those responses, some common themes emerge. Validation, for one. Hearing your feelings are valid can be incredibly powerful, especially for people who've been constantly invalidated or dismissed.
Yeah, it's like finally someone acknowledges that your experience is real, your pain is legitimate.
Exactly. And sometimes, comfort can be as simple as just having a safe presence, someone who's there without judgment, without trying to fix things. You know, just being present can be incredibly grounding.
Just knowing you're not alone in that moment.
Right. And that ties into respecting boundaries, doesn't it? Understanding that physical touch or certain words, even well-intentioned advice,
Yeah.
can be triggering.
Yeah.
Sometimes the most comforting thing you can do is just listen. Just hold space for their pain.
Let them know they're not a burden for needing support.
Exactly.
So, seeking comfort, essential as it is, a lot of the subreddit was also dedicated to sharing like actual journeys of healing from CPTSD. There's this one thread, what has helped you heal the most from CPTSD? And it was like opening up this treasure chest of different
That's
approaches.
interesting. What were some of them?
Everything. People were talking about therapy, EMDR, IFS, that's internal family systems therapy, somatic therapy, good old-fashioned talk therapy. Then there was self-care practices like meditation, yoga, journaling, exercise, even alternative therapies, stuff like psychedelic-assisted therapy, ketamine therapy. It was amazing, this whole toolkit, and everyone was finding the tools that worked for them.
And that's the key, isn't it? There's no one-size-fits-all approach to healing from CPTSD. It's a deeply personal journey, you
It
know?
really is. It's like everyone's working with a different recipe. You might start with the same base ingredients, but then you adjust, you experiment, you find what nourishes you.
Exactly. And just like with recipes, what works wonders for one person might do absolutely nothing for another. That's why it's so important to approach these healing modalities with a sense of curiosity, definitely, but also with caution. Always, always consult with a qualified healthcare professional.
Especially with some of those alternative therapies.
Hmm.
Psychedelics, ketamine, those are powerful tools.
Absolutely.
They need to be used responsibly under proper guidance.
100%.
Yeah,
But it is incredibly inspiring to see the diverse ways people are finding healing.
it really is.
And I think the important thing to remember is it's not about being fixed.
Right.
It's about building a more fulfilling and empowered life. And honestly, that's a journey worth taking.
100%. Now, you mentioned EMDR. For those who don't know, that's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's a type of psychotherapy originally designed to help with the distress from traumatic memories. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Sure, the basic idea behind EMDR is that when something traumatic or disturbing happens, it can get kind of stuck in the brain,
Yeah.
with all the sights, sounds, thoughts, and feelings from that moment.
Like a broken record, just playing on repeat.
Yeah, kind of. So EMDR uses these bilateral stimulations like eye movements, hand taps, even sounds, to help the brain process those memories in a new way. It's like it's helping your brain refile those memories so they're not as distressing.
Interesting. So it's not about erasing the memory, but changing how you react to it. Now, another therapy that kept coming up was IFS, internal family systems. How does that one work, and how could it help someone with CPTSD?
Okay, so IFS sees the mind as being made up of different parts,
Yeah.
right? Each with its own perspective and function. There's a part of us that wants to protect us, a part that's looking for connection, a part that carries our wounds, and so on.
So it's like we have all these different voices in our heads.
In a way, yeah. And with CPTSD, certain parts, often the protective ones, can become really extreme or rigid as a way to cope with the trauma.
Makes sense. Like if you've been hurt before, you build up walls to protect yourself.
Right. But while those defenses might have been necessary in the past, they can cause a lot of internal conflict and pain in the present. So IFS is about getting to know these parts, understanding their intentions and how they interact with each other. And by building compassion for ourselves and for these different parts, we can start to heal old wounds and create a more harmonious internal system.
So it's about learning to be more compassionate with ourselves, recognizing that these different parts, even the ones that seem negative, they were just trying to protect us.
Exactly.
Like instead of fighting against these parts of ourselves, we can start to work with them.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that every part, even the ones that seem, I don't know, negative or destructive, they developed for a reason.
Yeah.
They were trying to help us survive a difficult situation.
Right, like they were doing their best with what they knew at the time.
Exactly. And with IFS, we can start to kind of update that information, offer those parts compassion, understanding, help them work together in a more harmonious way.
So we've talked about therapy, both traditional and alternative, but what about those everyday things, the self-care stuff? Saw a lot of mentions of meditation, yoga, journaling, even just exercise. How do those practices fit into the healing journey?
Those are essential, actually, because remember how we were talking about hypervigilance, that constant state of high alert? These practices can be really helpful in regulating the nervous system, calming down that fight or flight response.
So it's like hitting the reset button on your stress response?
Yeah, in a way, meditation, for example, can help someone become more aware of their thoughts and feelings without judgment, which could be huge for people with CPTSD who are, often battling that inner critic. Yoga combines movement and breath work, which can be great for releasing tension held in the body.
Mm.
Journaling can provide a safe space to process emotions and experiences. And then exercise. Well, that's always good for stress relief, boosting your mood.
Giving your body and mind the tools to kind of self-regulate, find a sense of calm.
Exactly. And what's great about these practices is they're accessible. You don't need special equipment or anything. You can start incorporating them into your life today, right now.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just taking a few minutes to breathe, going for a walk, jotting down your thoughts. These small acts of self-care can make a big difference. Reading through those subreddit threads, one theme, I don't know if you noticed this too, but one theme that kept popping up, and I think it ties into everything we've been talking about, was this idea of reparenting your inner child.
Oh, absolutely. That's such a powerful concept, isn't it? It's about recognizing that those unmet needs, those wounds from the past, they're still with us. And instead of ignoring them or pushing them down, we can actually choose to meet them with compassion and understanding.
Like becoming the loving, supportive parent you always needed.
Exactly. It's about giving ourselves the validation, the safety, the unconditional love that we may not have received growing up. And in doing so, we can start to heal those old wounds, develop a more nurturing, more compassionate relationship with ourselves.
It's like we can rewrite the script of our own lives, take those painful experiences and reframe them with kindness and understanding.
I love that. And that's a journey we can all embark on. Whether or not we have CPTSD, we all have an inner child who needs our love and attention.
So well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive into CPTSD, what would you say is the most important thing for our listeners to take away from all of this?
For me, it's that healing is possible. It's not about being fixed or erasing the past.
Mm.
It's about developing a more compassionate, more empowered relationship with ourselves, finding ways to move forward.
And it's a journey, right? It's going to have its ups and downs.
Oh, absolutely. It's not linear,
Hmm.
but with every step we take towards understanding, towards compassion, towards self-care, we move closer to healing, to wholeness.
And you're not alone in this.
Mhm.
The r/CPTSD subreddit is just one example. But there are incredible communities and resources out there for people who are struggling.
So true.
So as you move forward from here, approach this topic, approach yourself with curiosity, with compassion, and with a whole lot of patience. Healing takes time, but it is a journey worth taking. Thanks for joining us, everyone.